All right, I think it's the appointed hour. And Patrick, I can't see anyone on the screen there in the room.
Well, maybe we'll adjust cameras for that, but we do have the mayor and Commissioner Tyne with us in person, and myself and others who are responsible for presentations. So we're all ready.
Great, great. Well, good morning, everyone. Why don't we get rolling here? I'd like to thank you for joining us at the DMC Executive Committee meeting, and you've already helped acknowledge the other board members who are in the room with you. And then Jim Campbell and Paul Williams and Brooke Carlson and I are all joining you virtually. And Patrick, if I've missed anyone, please shout out. I'll just acknowledge, I'm not sure, Kayla, if we need to indicate why we are participating virtually.
Madam Chair, indeed we do. And so this would be a fine time to do it. It can include things like scheduling conflicts or health issues, but it would just be the committee members, yes.
Great. So I'll start. I am out of state and juggling some competing scheduling issues. Paul, why don't you go next?
Yep, I have scheduling conflicts today with the Federal Reserve Board meeting.
Great. Jim?
And Madam Chair, it would just be the committee members. So I think that we have it covered in terms of the remote participants.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry about that. All right, well then why don't we go ahead, and we'll need to begin by calling the roll. And because we do have members participating virtually, we will do all of our voting as well by roll call. So Kayla?
Certainly in alphabetical order. Vice Chair Norton.
Present.
Treasurer Tyne.
Here.
Chair Wheelock.
Here.
Secretary Williams.
Here.
All committee members are present.
Thank you, Kayla. Now we need a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved, Tyne. Second.
Is there a second?
Norton.
Great. Moved and seconded. Kayla, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Norton.
Yes.
Treasurer Tyne.
Yes.
Chair Wheelock.
Yes.
Secretary Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And now is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Approval.
Moved and seconded. Kayla, again, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Norton.
Yes.
Treasurer Tyne.
Yes.
Chair Wheelock.
Yes.
Secretary Williams.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, so for the executive committee, we have two main agenda items, and let's tee up the first one. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, and with Patrick today, we have Doug Holtan from the Mayo and Allison Zelms from the City of Rochester. So Patrick.
Thank you, Chair Wheelock, members. Today's discussion and presentation is the annual report that we submit to the Department of Employment and Economic Development, which documents the prior year private investments from both Mayo Clinic and other non-Mayo private investments. And just to steal the punchline, the report is going to show nearly $200 million of private investment in calendar year 2022 and for other years where permits weren't closed until 2022. Well, we provide this report each year to DEED, which gets approved by this body, and DEED then receives and reviews the report, ultimately audits the submittal, and that triggers a release of state aid each year. And just to remind people of the formula, it is a combination of Mayo Clinic investment throughout Rochester, non-Mayo private investment within the DMC district. Those two numbers combined not just for this year, but from all preceding years, gets submitted. And the formula is that the state will release a formula of 2.75% of those total amounts of money, up to a maximum of 30 million. And of course, that funding, called General State Infrastructure Aid, GSIA, is received by the city of Rochester and used for DMC projects that are approved by this board and by the city council. Today's presentation is not about approving the use of any funds, it's only documenting the report, or rather the investments that took place in prior years. So with that, I'd like to turn to Doug Holtan, Senior Executive from Mayo Clinic, who's been at this table many times and each year presenting this report. I would like to ask him to present the Mayo Clinic report.
Thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to join you today. And with that, I will be sharing with you the total investment that Mayo is submitting to deed for 2022. That totals just under, or just about $172.6 million. That's the largest annual investment Mayo has made since we began the program in 2013. And since that 2013, Mayo has invested $934 million that qualified under the legislation and submitted to deed. This investment does go across a variety of projects at Mayo in Rochester. And with that, of course, we have very visible new builds, but really want to emphasize as we look at patient care, especially modernization and growth occurs behind our walls every day at Mayo as we continue to modernize and change our facilities to meet the evolving medical and research and education needs. So significant upgrades occur across our campuses of St. Mary's and downtown. Also, of course, a very visible Kellen building is going up. That building will be a research-intensive building, 176,000 square foot building, opening at the end of 2023, early next year. And with that, at full occupancy, we'll see between 500 and 700 employees working in that building. Discovery ramp, as far as infrastructure for Mayo Clinic, this ramp opened up just this past Monday. Just under 1,200 stall parking ramp. And with that, 800 stalls are dedicated to Mayo. They're used exclusively by Mayo. The remaining stalls, 388 stalls exactly, are being leased to Mortensen, which they will then in turn sublease to the non-Mayo occupants of Discovery Square. So this is supporting recruitment and growth of Discovery Square. Also, the East Logistics Building, this is located immediately to the east of Methodist Hospital Superblock. This logistics building was required to make way for growth of our practice within Proton Beam. Logistics building will be opening April 10th of this year. I mentioned Proton Beam. This significant growth project to meet the very high demand for proton therapy for our patients. This will be going just to the south of the Jacobson building where we have existing proton facilities. The new building will have 2 additional gantries that will allow us to see 900 additional patients per year. This project will be kicking off in May of this year and opening in second quarter of 2027. So a lot has been done and we have a lot more going on as we look to the future. And with that, I'll pass it on to Allison for the non-mail.
Do you want to just maybe reflect on the next slide, which talks a bit about the job?
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Patrick, I forgot my last slide. Very important slide, actually. As we look at our 2022 investments, again, we look at the total number of permits that were pulled by Mayo Clinic. 279 permits were pulled. If we look at the direct impact, so that is those projects that we submitted to deed, but also those that were just care and feeding that did not qualify. But looking at that direct impact for the community is calculated to be $446 million. And also, just to further emphasize Mayo's commitment to the community, if we look at all work that is done under these permits, taking away the Mayo self-performed work, 99% of that work is done by Rochester area builder members. So again, the support of the community is great, the partnership is critical, and we definitely appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug and Patrick, and of course, our partners at the Mayo Clinic. The work that you reflected on really does create a ripple effect across the entire community, but of course, in these reports, we really focus on the DMC area. So I wanted to just touch on a few highlights and the different types of investment that are happening from the non-Mayo private investment that we see from our partnership with DMC and through the state and Mayo Clinic, as well as the other private investors. These total about $26.4 million of non-Mayo private investments, and they really focus on reuse of existing facilities. So not everything is new coming out of the ground. Sometimes that's reinvestment that is supportive to the significant Mayo investment that you saw. The new investment, so we do still have new things that are occurring and redeveloping or developing in Rochester in the DMC area, and then investment across sectors is what you see in some of these highlights. So the growth doesn't just happen in one area, but covers a few different areas of economic development. So just from the reuse perspective, we have the Uptown Landing apartments, so really important topic here is housing. But we also have a reuse of Interiors by J. Curry, so a smaller locally owned business that is focused on supporting all of the other reuse and tenant build out that you'll be seeing as we continue to attract new development into Rochester. And then, of course, the Bryk apartments, which you'll have another item on your agenda for, but those are just now opening. So I think we're really excited to see such a beautiful building there that's going to be housing a variety of different income levels. And then Spy House Coffee Roasters, which just finished their tenant build out over the last, about a year ago in Hotel Downtown. So obviously the hospitality industry and making sure that when patients and other visitors are here that they have things to do and enjoy. And then really across sectors from Thermo Fisher Scientific that just is going to be a new tenant in Discovery One, and then the Mezzanine Cafe and Desserts on 3rd Street that has finished their tenant build out about a year and a half ago and is a big part of downtown and making sure that folks are traveling throughout the area when they're here and investing. And so I did just want to also point out that all of the investments that you're seeing here from 2022 are prior to adopting the new Unified Development Code, which is really attractive to developers. And so as we have that become underway, I think you're going to actually see some more significant investment from the non-Mayo private investment over the future years as we kind of reduce some of the barriers for folks and made ourselves even more attractive to development in Rochester instead of elsewhere across the state or country.
So thank you, Doug and Allison. These are intended to simply illustrate the Excel sheets, the spreadsheets that show and add up to the total of $199 million. A lot more detail in those, but was an attempt to give some life to what makes up those numbers. When we look at how does this stack up over the past 7 to 10 years, you can see that in 2022, in the blue is the Mayo investments and the orange is non-Mayo investments. And you see them stacked, and that's the way we present these data. $199 million, it's an increase from both 2020 and 2021. And it is above the average. You can see the green line, which is the average of about 150 million over the past 10 years. So in sort of a visual way, you can see the uptick in investment going on, and you can see that in 2022 we are above average. I think it's also important to note that that the significant amount of this year's total is from Mayo Clinic investments, and we can talk more about that in a moment. And then final chart I will show is the accumulation over time. So if you stack each year's investments on top of each other, we are at nearly $1.5 billion total since the beginning of the Destination Medical Center initiative. It's been stated, this is the largest number reported from Mayo Clinic in this period of time. We have now met the formula, if you recall the chart I showed at the beginning, which is the formula used to release state funds. We have now exceeded the level, met the level that allows us to receive the maximum amount from the formula from state general infrastructure aid. And we are trending upward following the pandemic, but I would again just note the non-Mayo investment of 26 million is lighter than it has been, less amount than it has been in previous years, and happy to reflect on that as well. But maybe, Madam Chair, I will pause for questions or comments.
Well, thank you, Patrick, Doug, and Allison. Are there questions or comments from the any of the members?
I'll just comment quickly, Madam Chair, that I'm really pleased to,
Mayor Norton?
thank you, to see the numbers from 2021 and 22. You know, it was a difficult couple years, but Rochester is so fortunate compared to other cities across the country that we did see continued growth and development right at or above the average, which is really quite amazing given what the country went through. So I'm pleased to see the trend upward, and I think that will, without question, continue. But just worth noting that even during the pandemic, we did continue with a positive and strong economy despite everything else.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Member Williams.
Yeah, I was just going to echo that same comment. I mean, to have come through the pandemic and to still see, you know, this kind of investment, both from Mayo, but especially the private non-Mayo investment, I just think is really phenomenal. So just really feel fortunate and a lot of good work on a lot of fronts.
I'll jump in here as well. I think this is really the benefit of this significant piece of legislation that was passed a decade ago, where you have a primary entity in the community that you're trying to facilitate their continued growth, and they can be more planful over periods of economic disruption, as evidenced by Mayo's commitment and expenditures in the last year. I would expect the private industry to be a little bit more impacted by economic uncertainty, and I think we did see that. But the strength of the Mayo's investment during that period of time supported an industry that will be ready to continue to ramp right up as the economy continues to stabilize and hopefully improve. So I appreciate actually that there was significant non-Mayo private investment, but it does demonstrate the value of having a critical partner like the Mayo Clinic that can advance a plan and execute a plan across economic cycles. And it's just really impressive that this is the single largest investment during these past years by the Mayo Clinic during such an incredibly challenging period, and really the impact that's had not just on the DMC downtown zone, but the entire community, and in fact, the whole southeastern region of Minnesota is just really impactful. So it's really strong report and great news. I'm a little challenged perhaps to see if there are other comments. So Patrick, you're in the room, help me out if and I'm not. But I think we're ready for a motion to actually approve the resolution.
Move approval?
Second.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Kayla, would you call the roll?
Vice Chair Norton,
Aye.
Treasurer Tyne,
Aye.
Chair Wheelock,
Aye.
Secretary Williams.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to Doug and Allison for joining us today. We have another agenda item related to the Bryk at Broadway development, and between Patrick and I, we will talk about why we're considering this now. This has actually been before the full board previously. There are some time-sensitive adjustments, and the executive committee has been empowered by the full board to consider modifications to an approved transaction by the full board in between board meetings. And so because of the time sensitivity, we're going to talk about this here today. Otherwise, we would typically wait until another full board meeting. So I know if I've made any misstatement there, Caleb will jump right in, but I believe that's accurate. And I'm going to ask Patrick if you would present this next agenda item.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring this before you. This is action, and I will also invite Kevin Bryk, Director of Housing and Sustainability, to do the bulk of this presentation. And Allison Zelms remains here with us, as this is a topic that was considered by City Council as well earlier this week. So should there be any questions from that perspective, she'd be prepared to answer. So we are here to request of you to authorize the city, which is actually the agency that has the agreement with the developer, to authorize the city to adjust the development assistance agreement. And we'll provide a bit of detail about what's being asked of you. But first, I think just a reminder of the project. And I will just say that it was 2 years ago this month that the board authorized support for this project. So Kevin, who has on our team's behalf worked with the developer most closely and throughout the entire journey of your approval 2 years ago and the construction and development of the project until where we are today. And so with that, Kevin, I'd like to give you the floor.
Sure. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, board. Just a little bit of reminder of the Bryk project. So 2 years ago, we were in front of the board asking for approval for a portion of DMC funding to help support the project. This is a rendering from that project 2 years ago. And 2 years later, we can see the project very much living up to kind of the ideals and renderings of the design, as well as kind of the income levels, the sustainability, performance, among other things that we'll talk about. But all this to say that and in many ways, the project has delivered on kind of the vision, the mixed income approach that we shared with the board 2 years ago. Just a few other details from the project that was shared 2 years ago as part of the board meeting. It is a mixed use as well as mixed income apartment building with 180 unit counts in it at various area median income levels. So 54 at 50%, 18 at 60% AMI, and 108 at 80% AMI. Along with some commercial space that has been leased too. So some good progress there since over the past 2 years. Some additional project details just around the total project investments, the number of jobs that were created, both construction and permanent, as well as the eligible public infrastructure. This was helped to inform the ask of the DMC funds to help support the project. And probably, likely most importantly, the community benefits of the project that were shared in 2021. So we mentioned the mixed income workforce housing, which we'll spend another minute on talking about as part of this change that we're recommending today. But also it's providing housing in an area of the city that needs it. It's within walking distance of downtown. It's built to fairly ambitious sustainability standards, is pursuing green community certification and wrapping up that process as we speak. And then also has connectivity to the transit system along Broadway. It's adjacent to Civic Center Drive as well. And like I said, within walking distance to 45,000 jobs in the downtown. And then just a quick definition of workforce housing. So within our own Olmsted County Comprehensive Housing Study, they define workforce housing as a range between 50 to 100% AMI. And that'll come up in a second to help inform some of the recommendations that we have here. So just to summarize some of the key project issues that they're experiencing as we speak, the 50 and 60% AMI units are leasing well. The issue is largely with the 80% area median income units has been challenging and they are a majority of the units within the development. So over the past few months, as they've been trying to lease these units specifically, they've turned away over 40 potential tenants that are just outside the income thresholds for the 80% units. So it's really kind of with this struggle that the developer's been experiencing as they're trying to lease the building that we're in front of you today, making a recommendation around addressing the income levels for some of the 80% units within the building.
Kevin, could I ask before you go on, can you go back one slide and just, I would just want to be clear on it. It says that workforce housing is 50% to 120% AMI, and I think you said 100%, and I think it's really important that it's 120% on record. So I
appreciate that.
Okay.
Yes, 120%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So the staff recommendation summary, so there's a lot of items within the building from an income level that are unchanged. So today we're not proposing any change to the 50 and 60% AMI rents or the income limits. We're not proposing any changes to the 80% area median income rents. Those are remaining unchanged. What we are recommending is 54 of the 108 units will be available to families up to 110% AMI until October 1st, 2023. The remainder of the 54 of the 108, 80% AMI units will remain to the same income thresholds at the same rents. So the temporary change is only for half of the 108 units. And then there is a language clarification within your write-up too about clarifying that two unrelated adult couples basically can rent a 2-bedroom unit and each of their incomes will be reviewed separately. So if they're both under that 80% income limit, they will be reviewed separately in order to lease a 2-bedroom unit within this apartment building. The situation that was shared with us was around 2 public school teachers wanting to share a 2-bedroom unit. Combined, their incomes were above the 80% limit, but separate, they were not. And it seemed like a way to help provide housing to people that need it, especially the school teacher example resonated with us as we were talking through that with the developer too. So overall, that's the recommendations that we're here to review and discuss today and for your consideration, and happy to answer any questions.
Maybe,
Questions?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, as I mentioned, this was reviewed and discussed and action taken at City Council acting as the City Economic Development Agency, and sort of pending this action here. I don't know if there's anything you want to comment on that, Allison.
Sure, if I may, Madam Chair, I just want to let you know that acting as the Economic Development Authority, the City Council did unanimously approve this change on Monday. There was discussion about appreciation for there being sort of this shorter time limit, and also a lot of openness to flexibility, with the most important thing being providing housing for folks, and an appreciation that there still would be that the rental cost would be at that 80% AMI, and the short nature of this change allowing the project to get off the ground, be a successful housing opportunity for folks now and in the future, and that there's still a lot of opportunity in the future for folks that are at that 80% AMI. One key thing that was shared there is that we are getting close to the mid-year point where AMI will actually be updated by HUD, so there may actually be some automatic movement within how those are calculated that will make this less necessary. So the short time frame makes a lot of sense to get us to that point. That's all.
And Allison, before I ask for questions and comments, can you just be specific about what happens after October? So we're granting this temporary nature until October. Let's say it's fully leased. What happens, or not? Let's say either way, what happens in October?
My understanding, Madam Chair, is that in October, things go back to the way they were. So 80% AMI rent will also be looking at an 80% AMI household income. However, I think that third change of looking at the income separately would continue on with the development agreement. So the other thing that was pointed out during the EDA is that if someone, for example, is renting one of those 80% units and they have an AMI that is above that income threshold, when they move on, that unit could be rented then to someone who is at an 80% AMI income level at that time. So that natural movement potentially within the marketplace where folks are able to be here and then move on to a different type of housing will create a natural opening within the building for someone that is at that income level then to take over the next lease for that apartment.
Thank you. That's the answer that I expected to hear, but I think it illustrates that this is to really make sure that this project is successful right after opening and has revenue to support this development and to emphasize the partnership between developers and the community about trying to find ways to add affordable housing and to make sure that this can be successful and not leave someone in a challenging position right after opening. So I appreciate the long-term commitment and the flexibility right after opening. But I think I saw, is it Member Williams? Do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. I appreciate the flexibility as well, and obviously getting, you know, this project has always demonstrated it's a new model, right? Bringing multiple levels of affordability, including workforce housing, and really helping to demonstrate a new way of thinking about affordable housing. So I've been supportive of this since the beginning. I think this makes sense. I had the same question, Chair, that you did about what happens after October 23rd. So we pivot back to the 80% AMI kind of goal and standard, which I'm glad to see that. So this really is about helping them to get leased up fully and get the project off to a good start, which I think makes a lot of sense. It does, again, we're seeing, this is kind of a unique project in terms of these 80% units, but this points to the difficulty that affordable housing projects are having in ongoing operating costs, which have escalated, you know, through the roof. And so I'm just going to say for the record here, there is legislation pending at the state right now on what's called the 4D property tax classification, which would reduce the way that we tax affordable housing, the units 60% and below. But that translates into important operating savings for the developer and the owner. So that's true for nonprofits. It's true for for-profits. It's a really important change that has been talked about for several years now at the legislature. But this year we're hoping that's going to get passed, because right now a lot of developers are having a hard time, you know, making their projects pencil out, including us, right? Serving the very lowest income and doing workforce. So just a note for the record there. Appreciate the staff's work on this.
Thank you. Other comments, questions?
This is Mark. I'll just jump in. You know, initially when I saw this across my computer, I was a little concerned that this was just a move to go back on the agreement and line the pockets of the landlord with market rate rentals, and I was relieved to learn that wasn't the case, so I'm going to support this also.
Thank you. Yeah, this is I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, Madam Chair, what I was going to say is, I think I just want to acknowledge and indicate that the developer has been a real partner throughout this whole process. And if you note the date of when this project was first in front of us, it implies the pro forma was built during a very different interest rate environment, a very different construction rate environment, a very different labor environment, and a very different supply chain environment. And so they were built on sort of the old world, and then did the development during the new world, and really managed through as best they could all of the the construction costs and cost of equipment, et cetera. And I just really want to go on record of acknowledging the developer, local developer, for their hard work and partnership in this, and their commitment, as Commissioner Tyne said, to keep the rents, not change the rents whatsoever in this request.
Madam Chair.
Member Norton.
Yeah, I really appreciate Patrick Seeb's comments there, and I was thinking the same thing. This was a before and after scenario, including some decisions we made at the city council level regarding wages that really impacted these developments. And so I too have a lot of actually sympathy for what the developer has gone through, and have really appreciated the commitment that they have had to try to continue with the idea and the concept that we had in a way, and I think we're just giving them that little bit of wiggle room in order to get this off the ground. So I appreciate the support of words that I've heard and the comments, and want to thank the developer for their work.
Thank you for those additional comments from each of you. I think that because this is a modification of a pre-approved agreement, I think it is important to have a full discussion about what caused this to come before us and why it continues to be in our interest to allow some modification. I would love to see this developer actually be successful enough where they want to replicate this model multiple times over, or become the envy of other affordable housing developers or private developers wanting to move into this space so that we can replicate this elsewhere. So, but it is an unusual modification. It's unusual to have it be addressed by the executive committee, but the unanimous support at the city for this modification is also reinforces, I think, the appropriateness of considering this today. So I'd look for a motion to approve this
Move
resolution.
approval with pleasure.
Is there a second?
Second, Tyne.
It's been moved and seconded. Kayla, would you call the roll?
Vice Chair Norton,
Yes.
Treasurer Tyne,
Yes.
Chair Wheelock,
Yes.
Secretary Williams.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Well, I appreciate the efficiency with which the staff has teed up this work, and our members have actually reviewed and acted on the business of this meeting. And I think we're actually ready for a motion for adjournment.
So moved, Tyne.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Kayla,
Vice Chair Norton,
Yes.
Treasurer Tyne,
Yes.
Chair Wheelock,
yes.
Secretary Williams.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you all for your participation and presence here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all.